I can't give up on this tonight. I'm just irritated. And then I was sitting here thinking, well, what if we put that in here and then just made standoffs off of that the screen would go in? But the problem is it's so freaking big, you know, that even with standoffs, it would put the screen back out pretty much where we had it. I mean, we had it where this bracket touched, let's see here. This bracket was touching the dash up top like that, okay? So that bracket pretty much sat flush to the dash. So it's like if we make standoffs, it's like, why do that? I mean, you only dropped it back 1/2 inch. You know, you didn't really get it up in there. So that kind of just defeats the purpose. I was just trying to think of a way to not have to take the Maverick dash out and lose the original Comet dash. I mean, this thing will go up in there. Like, it physically fits and sits in there. I don't know. I might try to make some tabs off the back of that screen. If I can duplicate their tabs to go into them bottom tabs and then bolt in the top, then we'll be in business. All right, so here is what we're going to do. Kind of got a game plan and kind of rolling with it now. So I'm using this stuff not because of the bend or anything, just because this is a 90 right here. So I'm going to duplicate this tabs basically, okay? Basically, that's what I want, like that. I'm sitting this up here. This is what I've done, is I've sat that up here, got my width right, you know, cut it off. I'm using this thin stuff, number one, A, because it's lightweight. Don't want to put nothing heavy in the car. And B, because I can cut it with 10 snips, and I own a Harper, a 2-year-old Harper. So I'm not trying to make a bunch of noise down here in the garage. Plus, lightweight's amazing. So this is what I've come up with, is I have took these and cut these out of this, okay? So there's that 90. I snipped it again right there, and then I cut the corners off, okay? So these tabs right here are the ones that from the factory went into your cluster. So this is the back side of your cluster when you take your cluster apart. These tabs go on like that from the factory, okay? And they slide in when you put the cluster in, and that holds the bottom of the cluster in place. So what we're doing is we're duplicating this basically with something like that, okay? So we want to duplicate that. Now, that means that the 90 needs to go towards the back of the car, because obviously this is the motor, this is the face of the car, this is the gauges, okay? The backside, we're on the backside. So that means that when we move it over here to our Pro Dash, this is our 12.3 Holley Pro Dash, the backside of it, the tabs need to face like this. That way they're going to stay the same. So we're working with screen and gauges facing down. Okay, so now we need to figure out how to get this tab onto here. We want to start, I think I want to start like this first. That way I can just sit the dash in there, and then I think the top's going to be a breeze. Basically, it's going to be another 90 degrees with a big flat piece that will make a template out of cardboard. So what we've done now is we moved on to this scrap. This is also off my trailer. Now, y'all should be able to go to Lowe's, Home Depot, hardware store, wherever you're at, and pick up some of this. This is really thin. As you can see, this is pretty thin. I don't have nothing to compare it to laying around that would help you guys out, but it's thin. I mean, it's lightweight, okay? So it's thin enough where I can cut it with them snips. This is just scrap off the trailer. As you can see, it's busted. What we're going to do now is we made us this stick, okay? This is just a piece of 90. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take this 90, and this is going to get bolted to the back of the Holley dash on the bottom. So we're going to center it up. We're going to find center and everything on both sides. What I have done is I have cut it the same length as this outer edge of your Holley right here, from that outer edge to that outer edge. Okay, I went a little long because I can always trim this piece down if I want to. So we're going to line up our ends. Okay, and I'm going to just lay my cluster here so I can kind of compare. Now on the cluster, this just happens to work out where I have these pieces right here that you can line up with the end of the dash like that. So we're going to line that piece up with the end of dash on that side, and that lines up that piece with the end of dash on this side. I mean, it works out freaking perfect. So you know you're centered, okay? So now we have where, well, we're going to keep that lined up without hitting it. So make sure we're right on both sides. Now we know where our bolt's going to go. So we put this back on here, okay, and then we'll line that up. Basically, now we're lining that metal up with the end right there, with this piece, and with the end of the screen. And on the other side, we should be closer. We're a little bit long. So we're just going to cheat it that way, just a touch, so it can be heavy, because like I said, I can always trim this aluminum back if I need to be. And now we will simply take our marker and we're just going to mark our screw holes. So this is where our tabs need to be. This is the center of our tabs right here. Okay, because it's coming off our screw hole. That's where that tab mounted from the factory. It went like that. Okay, so we're going to do both sides like that. And now what we're going to do is we are going to take this and we are going to attach this to that. I'm probably going to use rivets. I don't think not going to have Mike weld this or nothing like that. We're going to go ahead and just rivet this at the house because I have rivets. Remember, we want our tab facing down. So we want our tab facing forward. Okay, so it's going to be like that, not like that, because we're working face down on everything. And you remember a second ago I said that's going to be down. So we're going to take that, line the center of that tab up with the center of that line, rivet that on, and then come back over to our screen. Okay, so what y'all don't see is all of the trial and error that goes into figuring this stuff out. So I had already put the tabs on, but that's not going to work. Once you have that center marked, then you can go place your tabs on there and you can drill the holes through them to mount your tabs. And I'll show you how the tabs get mounted here in a second so you can drill accordingly. After that, what you're going to do is you are going to leave your cluster right here for reference. Okay, so we're still going off the end. This little end piece right here lines up with the end of our screen. That's going to keep everything centered pretty much. It just happens that that's the same distance. So that piece right there to the end of our screen, that piece right there to the end of our screen. We have our lines marked for the center of our tabs. So now all we're going to do, okay, you see that right there? So our lines are marked. Then you're just going to simply, what I did originally was you take this like this, rotate this, keep your line that you just made center right here, because that is where your screw hole is. So you're doing that right there. Okay, so that line, which is the center of your tab, keep it centered, and then you'll come right here and you'll take a Sharpie and you'll mark your screw holes. Okay, now these are slightly shifted because I'd already done this the other way and I'm figuring out as I go. Once you have your bolt holes marked, because that keeps your screen centered to your opening, because this is your opening in your dash from the factory, is you're using your gauges as a template for the opening in the dash, so you're not working in the car and having to do the dash. Mark your bolt holes, okay? And then what I did was I transferred them over to this side, okay? So I transferred them to that side. I made a mark up like that, and then I came and found my ends, okay? So you have your center, your bolt holes like that, and then you'll simply, I just slid this down like this, and if it's tight right there, I pulled it down just a little, okay? So you're tight, pull it off just a little bit to give yourself some slack, and draw a line. Come to this side, the same thing, shift your metal back, line it up right there, make you a mark right there. That's the center of your hole, but pull it down this way a little bit. So you're going tight because mine hit right there. Pull it down a little bit. And let me measure the width of this because somebody's going to ask, because this fits perfect up to there. So let's see here. That way you know what this is. 3/4. So this is 3/4 by 3/4, 90 degree. I think this is stainless or aluminum. It might be aluminum. It's either stainless or aluminum. It's really thin. Okay, so using 3/4, you can shift it down just a little and it will clear that plug. Then you're going to go drill your screw holes. So now we have our bracket laid out how we want it. Now originally a minute ago, I had done this with the tabs like that. Okay, that's where I was at, and that's just not going to work. We're going to put it on like this. I'm sorry, y'all. Bear with me. I'm trying to figure this out as we go. All right, so it's going to be like that. That's what we're going to try this time. And then we're going to put our tabs like this. So let me go rivet up my tabs to this real fast, and then I will show you how it ends up. All right, so I have took my tab, and I found the center line. Okay, so I marked the center line of the tab, and then, of course, we know where our piece, our tab goes, and so I have just centered my tab. This is what it should look like. Okay, basically like that. So your tab should be up in there like that. And I'm gonna show you this when it's all done here in a second, okay? So now I'm gonna re-drill these holes, because remember, I've already done this once. I'm gonna re-drill these holes and then re-rivet this tab zone. All right, so this is what you're gonna look like when you're done. This is how your bracket's gonna look, okay? You're gonna have the screen holes in this side. You're gonna have the tabs on that side, okay? Screenshot that, memorize that, whatever you need to do. These pieces are a little longer. I think you can do this perfectly fine out of just 3/4 by 3/4 inch stock. I don't think you need this longer one. You can see that it's not that much longer. I think I'd be perfectly fine by just using the 3/4 by 3/4 stock. So you probably can just get one piece of this to build this piece right here and be perfectly fine. I don't think you need it that long for what I'm gonna do, because I think our mount's gonna drop way down to here in the dash. So you're not gonna need all this length at all. So now we're gonna take this and we're gonna mount it up like this. So we're gonna take our screws, let's see here, get all of our screws put in there. That's how it should go. Okay. All right, so that's what you end up with. That's how it should look. Okay, just like that. We're gonna go fit this in now and see if this works like I want it to work, like I think it will work. This problem that sucks about doing YouTube is that sometimes you got to redo things multiple times, and then you got to film it all over anytime you make changes. So now we're just gonna come in here, find where our tabs go. There we go. So that dropped into there. Now all we gotta do is build the top. So that's how it should be. And you can see now that I'm a little long, and I'm also touching my chromes. I'm gonna put some door edge protector on that right there. But this piece will definitely, I beat all this out earlier. This will get painted black whenever we're done. What I did was come in here with my hammer and a scrap bolt. So I come in here with a ball peen hammer, and I actually hammered the corner. There's a little metal flange that runs around. I actually just hammered that in so that would clear a little better. So what we're gonna do now is figure out how to mount this top. So let's see here, our screw hole is gonna be right back there. So we're at a bad angle. So we're gonna bend these tabs down a little, I think, and then build a piece that comes off the top. And we have took our tabs right here and we bent them down slightly at a 45. So now our screw hole, we can pretty much hit dead on by clearing the screen, okay? You wanna make sure you bend them tabs where your screws can go in slightly at a 45 into them tabs. That's what we're gonna want, okay? So we're gonna bend up a piece of metal that sticks out, that bolts to the back of the screen, and then comes up at a 45, about 2 inches. So I'll show you. All right, so now what we're doing is I have took me another scrap piece of aluminum. This is also really thin. This is actually left over from where we built the border. So if you go back and watch the video on how to flush mount Lexan windows, we actually built aluminum borders that rivet into the car, and then you screw your Lexan into it so you can flush mount Lexans in these cars. This is a piece left over from that. I have laid this on here like this, traced out, as you can see, the top, and then cut it. So my piece is a little narrower than the actual opening, okay? So you can see that the cluster hangs past it a little. And what I did was I have made my piece the same width of my screen, okay? So my piece is the same width as my screen. I think that was, let's see here, 13 7/8, 14 inches basically. I went a little big. So somewhere around there, that's how wide I made it. And then how deep I made it, I don't know if we're gonna need this measurement, is 7 5/8, okay? So that's what I have made that. And then like I said, I traced it to the top. So now what we have is we need to know where to put our screw holes at. So I just test fitted this in here, and I want it to match right to the edge pretty much of this. So we are gonna go, take my tape measure, right into the edge like that. So our screw holes are gonna be 1 1/8, okay? That's where our screw holes are gonna fall. So we'll come over here and we will mark 1 1/8 on this, and then scribe it across. So we'll pull down from the top, mark 1 1/8 on both sides, straight line it. So now we have our line 1 1/8 across. Now we're gonna come in here. Actually, no, we don't have to go in there, okay? We should be able to use this. Yep. So we could take our cluster, pretty much line it up. And I think what I had done was, let me see here, line it up like that. Is pretty much, again, because this was the width of my screen, is pretty much the width of my aluminum. So if we set this back a little, that center piece again is the width of the aluminum. So we're just gonna line this up to where we cut it, again like that, and then just shift it back just a touch. Okay, like that, just a touch. This is gonna give us where our screw holes go. Put one mark there, one mark there. Okay, so that's gonna be our screw holes. And then we can transfer that down to there. Hopefully this top is decently square. And we're gonna drill these holes big again so that we have plenty of play. Try and do this one-handed. All right, so there we go. So now that should be, yep, close to the same as our spread right there. Okay, so let's go ahead and punch some holes in this, and this hopefully will screw up inside the dash. All right, and to drill these holes, we used a 7/32. This is so that we can use our factory Phillips screws, and they go right in there with a little bit of play. So now let's go put it in there and just test fit it and make sure that it does screw up in there like it's supposed to. All right, so got my screw holes right. They bolt right in, you know, the spread on them. I'm gonna take this piece back out and then put my screen in and figure out from the back of the screen to where the screw hole is, so I know where to make my bend. Okay, so with my screen in there, okay, so from the back of my screen, so I'm gonna hook it so that I feel the screen. I'm actually pulling on the screen. That's gonna be, looks like 3/4 of an inch. Okay, that's 3/4. And the way the Stanleys are made is they've got them little, you can see on the ends of them, they have them little hooks. So that's how I'm hooking the screen upside down, because that's how your Stanley tape measures are made. So now we know that we can go back over here and that we're gonna need 3/4 of an inch from our screw holes to where we're gonna make our bend at. All right, so screw holes down 3/4 of an inch, make a line across. This is where we want to make our bend. And I think my bend, I'm gonna make it about a 45. I'm gonna just rough it, and then I can bend it and tweak it by hand. All right, now I don't have no fancy bender, but if you are familiar with the channel and you're not new here, you know that I have a Harbor Freight bender. I went over this when we built the wing. We built the wing for this car, this wing right here, using this Harbor Freight bender, and I actually showed how to do all of this. There's multiple series on how to build a wing yourself in your garage with no expensive tools. So I have marked my 3/4 and set my bender up for 3/4, and now I'm gonna go ahead and bend this thing. So I'm gonna come up with this, and you can tell this metal's thin. Let's see here. We'll go more because it's easier to straighten it out than it is to bend it. Okay, so I think that's a heavy 45, extremely heavy. So we're gonna do that, and then we can just put it on the ground and kind of stand on it or squish it to straighten it back out if we need to. Let's test fit this. Before I test fit though, I know I don't need all of this metal. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut this back some. Let's see here, how much do I want to cut this back? I'm gonna cut it back down to 2 inches. So I'm gonna mark 2 inches off of this bend down, because that's gonna simulate going down the back of the screen. And then I'm gonna go ahead and cut this across 2 inches down from my bend. All right, so that is our 2 inches. That's our bend, but I did go and test fit this, and I can go ahead and tell you this is a little too wide for what we're working with. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna knock off 3/8 of an inch on each side, straight over it, and then we'll go test fit this one more time. All right, so if you want to skip all the guessing, that's gonna bring your overall length to 13 1/8. So if you just want to cut yours at 13 1/8 to begin with, the 2 inches this way, 2 inches that way, so you would have a piece 4 inches by 13 1/8, and then you would do your bend up. That'll save you some time versus having to sit here and figure it out like I'm doing now. All right, so test fitting this, 2 inches is not enough because of the GPS. So we need to cut a little bit more off. So let's just go ahead and measure this real fast. That's gonna be 1 3/4 inches. So let's just go ahead and cut that thing back to 1.5 inches. All right, so now from our bend to our line is 1.5 inches. That should clear our GPS thing. Now let's cut that off. All right, and then you need a little bit of roll to the edge right there. So what I've done is I've laid it on the edge of the table like that and just took my dead blow hammer and just lightly, you know, just hit it to kind of roll it around on both sides. That's how I have made just a little bit of a roll on the end so it don't dig into the vinyl dash so bad. So let's put this in now and see how it fits. All right, now at this point, you've got your piece screwed back in. You've rolled your edges to kind of help keep it from digging into the dash so bad. I'm definitely going to have to do a little touch up on that. That edge needs to really be rolled some more, but I'll fine tune it at the last minute. This is pretty much a 90 off of the ground. So you can kind of see right now that this is a 90 with the dash, and then it kicks out. That's what you're looking for. So when I bolted that in, I just kind of pulled on this to help bend the screw tabs down, because it's not going to hurt to bend these tabs down where the screws go in, you know, better. Then straight up and down. Just kind of bend everything like you want it. Now we're going to sit our dash back in here. Okay, now we have it. Now we can figure out where it needs to bolt to. So what we're going to do is come in here now. You can see I'm pretty much on my edge, but I'm still just going to take my Sharpie. Sharpie's not going to work. We'll take this pick. We'll just kind of scribe our aluminum so we can pretty much see where it goes. Okay, that's that. And then we can go ahead and look at our metal up there in our corners are pretty much flush with the outside of the screen. All right, let's take it out, and then we'll take this back to the bench and bolt it, get this where it attaches to the screen. All right, so again, we knew that our metal was pretty much flush with the end of the screen on both sides, and these last holes, I really should have left this thing a little bit longer. So if I were you, I would not drill this to the measurement I told you. I would leave it a touch longer if you can, because I'm probably going to have to use washers. And it's hard to do this stuff, film YouTube one-handed. Okay, so we're pretty much flush. Like I said, yours should definitely be a little longer, because this is not going to be good for me. I'll mark my bolt holes. Okay, and now I'm going to figure out how far this needs to set down. I know it's pretty much to the edge. So I can take it and kind of look through it at my scribed mark. So it pretty much needs to be right there. That's looking through it at my scribe mark. And then I can flip it over and mark the bolt hole on that side. Then I can come to this side, line up my scribed mark where I scribed it, shift my metal down a little bit. Mark your bolt hole. Then you can take your straight edge, connect the dots, and doesn't really look the best. But I mean, the stuff could be sitting in there crooked too, so this is not really an area that you want to be pulling measurements. So it don't look that bad now that I've drew it out. So off the bend, it doesn't look that bad. It actually looks pretty even. Now, we can take this. Okay, we got our bolt holes. So these things are going to be right on the end. So definitely make yours a little bit longer than what I did. I was just trying to make it so that it clears going in and out the dash and doesn't continuously scratch up everything. As long as I can get these holes drilled, we can come back and add some washers. All right, got all them marked. Let me go drill them. And them screw holes, again, remember, were 9/32 is the size I used, and you can see I barely had enough meat on both sides where it didn't jump out of the metal. But again, if you can afford to make yours just a little bit longer, I would now recommend that. So we're gonna get all of this put in here, screw this back in, and then we will go test fit it into the dash to see if it works. So here's basically what you're gonna end up with. We're gonna go ahead and put this back in there and see if it all screws in. All right, so there you go with it all put in. So now I'm not gonna lie to you, I went back and trimmed. You gotta trim your top. You're gonna have to keep trimming that top until it sits in there like you want it and clears everything. And then the screws, to get mine in, I had to go in at a little bit of an angle and then kind of straighten them out. That's the biggest pain in the butt, is getting all of these holes to line up and work together. But that puts your dash up in your Maverick or your Comet pretty much flush. Trying to get a good shot. See? Flush mounts it. So you can do this. If I can do this, you can do this. All I got left now is to take this thing out and clean all the edges up. I'm gonna put some door edge protector around it and paint everything black. Cut that back, pop all this stuff back in, cut that back, paint all that black, put door edge protector down there on the bottom so it don't completely destroy my chrome. But besides that, I'm really happy with that. I'm really happy with how that turned out, and that thing is in there solid. It's not gonna move around. It's, you know, that thing's good to go, and I think honestly it's a lot cooler. The only thing I probably want to try to figure out how to do is maybe get some side pieces. I got some carbon, but maybe double side tape some side pieces to this to kind of fill in the back, or just get some really tall black foam, and we might just stick some black foam to the back of it just so you kind of don't see up in there whenever you are looking inside the car. You know, you don't want to see behind there. But besides that, that's going to be a wrap. So hopefully that's not too complicated for y'all, and hopefully you can kind of follow along. Every car is going to be different. My measurements and my, everything that's for my car. Your car might be different. Just kind of follow my steps, check all your measurements, check your points, and you can flush mount a Pro Dash in your Maverick or Comet also. Like, comment, subscribe, share this video with other Maverick people, and let's keep growing this channel. Thanks, y'all.